Clayton is with Highway, which is our local feet on the street, local support, and a fine, educated, talented musician and engineer himself. So we've got great support and blessed to have him along with us. I work, let's see, what's the big fancy title this week? Industry Relations Market Development. My past experience includes a little bit of touring, a little bit of corporate AV. I have a CTSI. I've pulled copper, done project management, director of technical operations of integration corporate AV places as well. So a master of absolutely nothing, but touched a whole lot of stuff and can make a mess real quick. So real quick, we're just going to go through microphone characteristics. Talk briefly to the wireless spectrum this morning, just simply to define where wireless mics are at today. And then we're going to talk to actually selecting wireless. As Clayton had mentioned, we have a bunch of mics out here, and then we've got a bunch of mics on the guitar amp as well. A lot of times you're used to throwing a 57 up, or you stock this or you stock that, and that's what you hear and that's what you put on, that's either what's on the right or just what you provide for them. And so today is kind of a chance to actually go through and A/B. Everything's flat, it's just simply been gain matched. And actually here at 58 to a KSM8, through some other cardioid condensers, through KSM9, and then also a large Diaphragm 42 as well, just so that you've got a reference. Some folks get to hear, understand what that sounds like, and some folks never get to hear this stuff side by side. So just real quick, we'll kind of go through this. Transducer, right? Big thing about mics, we are converting acoustical energy into electrical energy. The big takeaway from this is that it's any acoustical energy in the room. So when we think about microphones and placement, design of a room, boundary mics, a close mic like this, or whether you've seen, for those folks that are doing corporate AV, we've got a new MXA 910 ceiling mic as well. They're different tools based on the user and what the user wants, what the user expects out of an experience. But the other important part of this too is that it's not looking just for human voice, it's noise in a room, right? So that means that when we have acoustical noise in a room, anything that's around that mic, that again is energy that's being transduced into electrical signals. So it's always important what we're trying to mic and then what we're trying not to mic, which also helps us pick and choose patterns. Two common designs, as we all know: dynamic, condenser. Dynamic has always been more of a road piece. In recent years with KSM8 and our beta series, we've been able to put out some really high quality condenser mics that are pretty doggone roadworthy as well. And then of course the three properties that we're going to look at this morning: polar pattern, frequency response, and sensitivity. These three pieces are typically what you find on every spec sheet from every manufacturer. And so again, just reviewing what those are and how to read these fancy pieces of paper. I know it's kind of small, but you'll notice the polar patterns are in the bottom left, the frequency response bottom right, and then sensitivities in that little midsection right there. So this is just a baseline. We all tend to have our own way of acoustically and artistically listening to devices to say, hey, we really like this tone, we like that tone. And when it comes down to it, a lot of times it is that. However, when we're doing a more scientific approach of a new product or a new application of a product, this again is a great point to start with, just to see what the manufacturer says it's going to do. So again, as we all know, dynamic microphones, it's considered a heavy diaphragm in comparison to a condenser. Yes, because of this design, which by the way we won last year, it's 2014, no, it was 2014, we won an IEEE Milestone Award, which is some sort of product that is essentially a change in the betterment of mankind. That's pretty deep, eh? Wow. Shure actually won it for the design of the Unidyne. So this design that you see here, which is a really generic picture of a dynamic mic, The unidirectional microphone was patented by Shure back in the 30s, and every other unidirectional mic that's been built is pretty much based off our design. That's why the KSM8 is such a big deal. It's the first dual diaphragm mic. It's the first actual real change to a dynamic mic in like 75 years. So we're kind of smitten over that one. Obviously, dynamic has always been used in live sound mainly. People have kind of said, oh, studio condensers, oh, live sound, dynamic, which is changing today. Obviously, there's no need for phantom power as well. Condenser microphones. So again, a much more lighter weight diaphragm, faster transient response, which means it's normally more sensitive to more lighter stringed instruments, any type of percussion, things like that, which is why we use it. As you can see, we've got like a Beta 181 up here. There's one over on the drum kit all the way up to that 42. You've got varying sizes of your actual diaphragm. It does require external power, as you can see in the fancy picture. You'll have two plates. One is actually a charged plate, and so as the acoustical energy hits that top diaphragm, it changes what the charge is in between the two plates, and that difference is then translated into voltage, which then travels down the line. Yes, for folks running condenser mics, everybody's familiar that wiring is a big issue, and you can't pass phantom through a transformer, right? Got to power it on the front side. Transient response. So again, two designs right there that we're going to look at on the condenser versus the dynamic. So this is done on a really expensive oscilloscope. You'll notice how quickly the attack and how tight it is and how the pattern returns on the condenser mic. So again, when you're miking things that are more delicate strings, this is one of the big reasons why condensers are always preferred over any type of dynamic, because it just gives you that extra ambient noise pickup, or not ambient noise, but it gives you just the extra resolution off of the instrument. That's why dynamics normally you find on louder things, but a lot of this technology is changing to where we're pretty much, you can mic almost a whole stage with condensers in this day and age and not kill anything. So Omni, as we all know, front to back. The cool thing is there's really no proximity effect with an Omni, but it picks up just as sensitive on the back side of this mic as it does on the front side. So if you have a really loud singer that likes live wedges, wouldn't recommend this. This could be a really exciting time in monitor world. I was that guy. I think I should have taken a psychology degree to do monitors, to be honest with you. I only had one drumstick thrown at me. It is obviously more forgiving because of the P-pops and things like that. So again, theater broadcast recording, you're going to see more of this style pattern in those. Going to a super cardioid. What's unique about this, and this is all physics, you'll notice that it's got a very much more narrow front end pattern, but you'll notice that it has a little lobe on the backside of it. So for folks that do wedges, that use any type of super or hyper, where a cardioid and a single wedge works great right here because it's in the null, you got to almost double wedge it, and you want to come off to the sides of that so that you're in specific to put the high frequency horn in those nulls of that pattern to get that extra volume out of it. It's cool, little things like that can save your butt on a gig if you're familiar with what pattern the mic is. But it does have a much more tighter, much more vocal presence. So when you look at a lot of the beta series, a lot of those will be a hyper, a super, and it gives you a little more presence on the front end of that mic when you're in a live sound situation to give you a much more tighter pickup pattern when you're on stage. And of course, the good old standard cardioid. Probably, I don't know how many mics we sell, and probably the majority of them are cardioid patterns. It's just the standard issue go-to, works on everything. Obviously, maximum rejection is right here at the very back end of the mic itself. So it's used probably some in studios, I'm sure, just as much as any other pattern, but it really is kind of the default, I think, in live sound, at least from my experience. Proximity effect. So proximity effect is something that happens specifically to dynamic mics. It is a boost in the low end. I'm sure everybody has experienced proximity effect on a mic before. That's one of the unique things when Clayton gets up here to do a demo that we're going to look at with this KSM-8. By going to a dual diaphragm on the dynamic, we have significantly reduced the proximity effect. You'll hear a volume difference as you physically get closer to the actual microphone itself, the diaphragm, but what you don't hear is this significant boost in this low end. And this is something that is just a fact of life with dynamic mics. It's the way the design is, it's the physics of it, it's just like the pattern of a super or a hyper. You've got that tail on the backside, and that's just a physics of the way that it's built and designed. So there's really nothing you can do about it other than grab your EQ or pray that you've got a consistent singer. Frequency response. So these are all the fun, exciting charts that we love to look at. We do try to be as accurate as we can. Shure has two anechoic chambers up in Niles, Illinois, where the world headquarters is. They're stereo matched. It's a match set so that they actually do R&D in one anechoic chamber, and they actually do quality testing in the other anechoic chamber, so that when they do the benchmarking during R&D, they can re-benchmark all the devices in quality assurance after manufacturing and production. So they actually pull a batch of 58s, a batch of MX405 goosenecks, a batch of KSM9s, and they actually do a quality test to make sure that we're hitting the marks that we put on our spec sheet with accuracy. So with frequency response, this is going to tell us obviously what the microphone will respond to frequency-wise, what it won't respond to, and really with what accuracy, or if it's a little bit extra sensitive. Sensitivity. So this is always a fun one. So sensitivity is also directly related to signal to noise. Now this was more of an issue studio-wise than live for years and years, because live we just had really loud audiences and things could be a little loose. Now with digital consoles, with digital processing, digital amps, signal to noise is becoming more and more of an issue because it's more and more noticeable now than what it used to be. But this is going to allow us to actually give some measurement to a mic of how sensitive it is. And of course the big fancy SPL, 94 dB SPL is 1 Pascal, which is like the measurement point. Whoever picked that, some guy that was really smart in science and math, not me. But again, this is also going to tell us how the mic will react to certain sounds, sensitive sounds. So again, rough measurements, 30 to 40 is highly sensitive, negative 40 to 55 medium, and then obviously negative 55 down to negative 65 on the low is somewhat of considered a low sensitive microphone. So what that means is, if I take this 58 and I compare it all the way to that KSM 32, 42 on the end, you're going to be able to pick up certain attributes of certain sounds of instruments differently, because they have completely different sensitivities. There's also situations where I wouldn't put that 42 in front of certain loud or obnoxiously large instruments, or certain instruments that move a lot of air per se, versus the 58 you could stick on front of a jet engine and probably record it.
But think it's an interesting perspective to have all these lined up. It's rare that you get a chance to listen to this many vocal mics in the same space. So we will start with the SM58. Everyone here has used this microphone, correct? Yes. So you know what it sounds like. We can talk about the proximity effect as I move into it. Boom, 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 boom. You can talk about the off-axis attenuation, right? Check, 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 check. Rolls off pretty quickly as I get around to the side of it. That's the SM58. This happens to be the model with the switch, though, which is the SM58S. So the next microphone is the KSM8, and even though price point wise this jumps up quite ahead of some of the other mics next to it, we thought for comparison's sake it would be easy to go back and forth between a KSM8 and an SM58 so you can hear the difference with that dual diaphragm dynamic mic versus a single diaphragm. So once again, as far as proximity effect goes, I'm coming in, not getting a lot, yes?
Quick question. Gain, as far as at the preamp and high pass filter at the console, are they, I just want to know what the baseline is.
Sure, so the baseline is we do have a high pass filter at what, 80 hertz?
80 hertz.
80 hertz, and we can relax that if you want. Sure, and then we did no other EQ to any of the microphones up here. The gain was set so that they were all coming in at the same input level, and they're all at 0 unity on the board. So we just try to make it very even for comparison's sake. So once again, if you look at this microphone or listen to me, and I'll try to do like a low end thing, versus the SM58, you can really hear that proximity effect. The other thing that's nice about this microphone is the off-axis attenuation is more gradual, so you can actually get a little bit off the side here, and you can still hear the tonality stays the same, even though I'm now talking at a 45-degree angle. I go to a standard directional cardioid microphone, or directional cardioid, that's redundant, single diaphragm cardioid or directional microphone, and I get off-axis at 45 degrees, you notice the tonality changes quite a bit too. Part of that's the proximity effect, but it's also just a little bit different polar pattern slightly there. So check 1, 2 from the side. Also, like we talked about earlier, as I move away, you do get less gain, but you also hear the sound of the microphone change. On the KSM8, as I move away, it's a very even sound. So you're right, for someone that's going to do the like here thing, it's going to sound the same tonality. This is a SM86. This is our entry-level condenser microphone. It's kind of a forgotten about mic. It looks a lot like the Beta 87s. Actually preceded the Beta 87s in development. But this is a cardioid condenser mic, and it's in the SM family. It's one of my favorite microphones in the Shure line, actually. And I think it's one that's often overlooked by people. But you can definitely hear now that I'm talking into a condenser mic, the sound quality versus that of a dynamic. Check 1, 2. 1, 2, check, check. Lots of presence here, right? No proximity effect. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and decent off-axis pickup as well. Not as good as the KSM8, but it's still pretty good on this one. So just kind of a reference point. This is the SM86. 1, 2, check, check. This is an SM58. 1, 2, check, check. Beta 87, I assume most of you have used the Beta 87 at some point. These mics came out in the 80s. This is the super cardioid version, the Beta 87A. It also comes in a cardioid version, which is the Beta 87C. The difference between the SM86 and the Beta series, one of the differences is the construction of the capsule itself. This is a neodymium element. So it's got a higher gain before feedback. It's a more sensitive microphone, and it also has more of a presence peak built into it too. You can really hear that a little bit on this mic versus the SM86 when I start going into the higher frequencies.
This is a lighter mic too.
Excuse me?
It's a lighter mic as well.
It is, yeah. Yeah. It's actually not that much lighter when you hold these two. And I welcome you to come up here afterwards and check it. The SM86 is about the same weight as the Beta 87, but check 1, 2, Beta 87. Check 1, 2, SM86. You can hear that tonality in the high mids, right? Check, check, check. Also, this one rolls off real fast because it's super cardioid. So I'm out of the pattern pretty quickly there. This is the KSM9. This is the dual diaphragm condenser mic, and you can definitely hear the sound quality here. It's got a more rich mid bottom to it, I think, and has all the highs that the other condenser mics have too. So check 1, 2. This is a KSM9. You'll notice that as I pull in and out, the tonality stays pretty consistent. And I don't remember what pattern we set this one to. This particular model can be a cardioid or supercardioid. I'm going to guess, it sounds like it's in cardioid right now because it let me get a little bit into the side here and still picked up. I'm going to compare this between this and the KSM-8 real quick so you can hear the difference between those two microphones. So this is the KSM-9 dual diaphragm condenser mic, check 1, 2. This is a KSM-8 dual diaphragm dynamic microphone, and you can hear the difference. This is a much warmer, flatter microphone. This has the characteristics of the condenser mic with that higher presence peak there to it. So, fabulous sounding microphone, one of my favorite handheld vocal mics. We also, for comparison, even though you don't do this a lot in the live world, this is a KSM-42, which is a dual diaphragm. It's a large diaphragm condenser mic, right? And you can definitely hear, this is a more sensitive mic than the others on stage. It's really meant more for studio, but you do sometimes see it in live applications, especially on instruments, whether it be orchestral instruments, sometimes even brass. Rarely see people singing through it, but it's got a lot different sound quality because of the large diaphragm. So as I get closer to it, obviously there's no proximity effect, but it does get a really good mid response, which I don't have a whole lot of low mids in my voice. But that's the KSM-42. This is a single pattern version. This is cardioid. We also make the KSM-44, which is a dual capsule, triple pattern. So it's got bidirectional, omnidirectional, and cardioid in that one. So anyway, what we've got going on up here is we've got 4 different microphones on this guitar amp. And by the way, I'm using the Shure GLX-D wireless system. Has anyone seen this one? The digital guitar wireless system. It's pretty nice because the receiver is built into a chromatic tuner pedal right here. So the guitarist can put it on their floorboard. It's 2.4 gigahertz wireless, and Mike will talk a little bit more about the GLX-D wireless and how it's different than the traditional UHF wireless in a little while. Rechargeable lithium-ion battery, 16 hours of battery life on this thing. So I don't know when the last time I charged mine was. I like to walk around the house with it. It goes forever. So anyway, what we've got going on the amp here is we've got 4 microphones. We have, of course, an SM57, which is kind of the workhorse for miking the guitar. I don't know if you can see this very well. We have a Beta 181, which is the microphone in the to-side address condenser, which I know Mike will address a little bit. It's the one that's got the 4 interchangeable heads. You can do Omni, super cardioid, or bidirectional heads, and we've got the cardioid on it. I've got the SM27, which is a large diaphragm cardioid microphone. It actually used to be the KSM27, same capsule. We rebranded that model and put it into the SM line. That's this large diaphragm down here. And then we have the KSM313, which is a ribbon microphone. This ribbon microphone is pretty unique versus other ribbon microphones in that it can handle a very high sensitivity level, SPL level, and it actually gets used quite a bit on guitars. I think the first time I saw one being used on TV was when The Who played the Super Bowl years ago. They had these on Pete Townshend's guitars, 57s and 313s, and I've seen guitar players like Slash and some other people use them on their rigs, the Black Crow. So bands that are playing at high volume level will use this microphone for a little bit of coloring. And it's a bidirectional mic, so it's got an interesting feature. As you turn that mic around from the front to back, you can almost lighten or darken the sound. The front is much brighter than the back. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know which microphone you have up first, probably 57? 57. So I'll just play some chords so you can kind of get a feel for that.
Okay, so we're going to the Beta 181.
Okay, so this is a condenser mic.